Welcome to Negotiation with Alice, your negotiation podcast. Everything that you do where you need to get on the same page with someone else is a negotiation. So whether you have to negotiate a contract with someone, or you simply need your boss to sign off on that program that you'd like to implement, or you want to figure out how to rebalance the chore structure in your home, or talk about what vacation you want to go on. All of these things are negotiations. So in my podcast, we go over both personal and professional conversations, which all are considered negotiation, and I will give you tips on how to come out ahead. Welcome to the show. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Today, I have Judith Weigle here with us, and Judith and I are going to talk about really fun stuff. Judith, I would love for you to introduce yourself to my listeners.
Thank you, Alice, and a pleasure to be here. I'm a family law mediator, primarily. Do a couple other things, but primarily family law. I've been doing family law for 13 years and general mediation about 3 years before that. I love mediation. I live for those magic moments in a mediation where everybody forgets about fighting, forgets about their own vested interest primarily, and just digs into what will make the situation the best for everybody. And that's why I do it.
Awesome. And so this is a really exciting episode because we've got two mediators who are going to be talking about negotiating the marital home during the time of a divorce. You know, it's very emotional. The home has a lot of weight and emotion and connection and symbolism, right? It's like where the family grew up. And so because of that, the emotions frequently get in the way of negotiation because whether someone can afford it or not, they want to keep it at all costs. So Judith, I'd love to just chat a bit about your experience with that, and I can throw in my experience as well, but sort of what are some of the things that you see happening when people are trying to negotiate the marital home during the divorce?
It's different if you have children versus no children. It seems to be, Alice, a much easier conversation if there are no children. It's just dollars and cents. You can either afford it or you can't. And what I find in the way of negotiation is if the person who wants to keep it maybe needs a year to pay off the equity position for the other spouse, it seems to work okay. I find a lot of compromise. But the real negotiation, the harder negotiation, is when there are children. And that goes back to what you said in the opening. It's enormously emotional. It gets beyond practicality and dollars and cents. And it is what you said. The memories are there. Depending on the age of the children, it's the only home they've known. Their friends are in the area. They're going to school in the area. And so I know it holds a lot of significance in their lives. But what I've found, and I'd love for you to comment on this before we seriously dig in, and that is, what do you really think the children care about the home? Moms put most of their concern into the children, but the relationship that the children have to the home is very different than the relationship adults have to the home. Speak to that.
Well, I would say, so first of all, I want to put things in context. Not only am I a divorce mediator, I'm also divorced. At this time, it's about 15 years ago that I got a divorce. And I know that for me, it wasn't so much the home. I was renting at the time. It wasn't so much the home. It was the fact that because there was already upheaval with the divorce, I didn't want to add the additional upheaval of moving. And so I ended up delaying it, where we stayed in the home for several more years, and maybe 6 years after the divorce, then we moved, because it was like so much was changing so quickly that as a parent, it wasn't so much like, oh, I want to keep the home. It was, I want to keep as much stability as I can while we're going through the divorce process, which, you know, I think sometimes is part and parcel of the whole strife when people are fighting over the marital home when they are owners.
No, stability is really, really important. You nailed it with that. So not only do they want to keep the memories intact, it represents stability for the children. So the children have a slightly different experience with the divorce than the adults do, right? The children, first of all, will blame themselves because their world centers around them. And if anything goes wrong in their world, this is what therapists tell me, if anything goes wrong in their world, they look at themselves. What did I do? Did I do something bad? And so that in and of itself is unstabling to children. And so you have to keep reminding the children, oh, please, no, we adore you. We each love you. So much so that we both want you all the time. Okay,
Right.
So there's your job. But when you say that you didn't move until 6 years after the divorce, does that mean both of you stayed in the house?
No, so he moved out, and so then I stayed with the kids, and then the kids went back and forth. So
Okay.
that's sort of what
Okay.
happened.
Well, if we could back up just a second. So let's just take a family with children. We'll focus on that because that's really where most of the mediation takes place. So we have a family with children, and the discussion is, okay, mom is going to try and see if she can afford the house so that the kids can stay there. But this brings up something else interesting. And Alice, it is the episode that got the most listens in every one of my close to 300 episodes I did in my podcast. And that is, what do you mean I have to move? This is Dad talking. Well, it's my home too. That is a huge issue. When does the person move out? Typically Dad. As the discussion is going on, because when both people stay in the house while they're going through divorce, you don't have personal space to grieve.
Right.
You can't transition well enough, can you?
It's very difficult for sure, especially if you've got a smaller home where you're sharing a lot of common space.
Yes.
Definitely it's difficult. It's a little bit easier if you have a large home where someone can live on one level, the other parent lives on the other level, and the kids can go up and down. That's a little bit more tenable, but I usually try to get people to get to some kind of a negotiated agreement where people are not suffering emotionally because they're stuck in the same place and fighting all the time.
So how do we do that? This is the never-ending question. So you don't want to be partial. The issue is we're not really calming things down enough. We're not allowing ourselves the space to grieve. We're not allowing ourselves the opportunity to start living as a single parent. When does that transition start? That's part of the decision. Well, when does Dad leave? And I'm sorry I keep putting it on Dad, but have you found that most of this is mom wants to stay in the house with the kids?
Frequently it is. However, I have seen where the dad is the one who wants to buy out, the house from the wife.
Yeah.
But I would say it's more heavily weighted towards the mom. But I would love to chat with you about how you help people when they are stuck in that emotional space to say, I want this house. I want to do whatever it takes to keep the house and keep the kids and me in there, when in fact they can't afford a buyout. How do you as a mediator traverse that terrain?
So I have that situation right now. We've had an ongoing series of 3 or 4 mediations over the past 3 months, and mom cannot afford the entire buyout to Dad, and Dad wants the entire buyout. He wants to buy something else. He doesn't want to wait 20 years, and that was the proposal, that I will not take spousal or child support so that you have a little bit more money while you're allowing me to pay you off after X number of years. So everything for me, Alice, goes down to numbers. The emotions at some point have to be pushed aside, and it's all about numbers. And I, as a mediator, have to let this play out as long as I see it having possibilities. Before I say, look, he doesn't want to do more than he's offered or agreed to. He just doesn't want to, and the numbers aren't going to change. So, and then I kind of am quiet and let them pick up the rest of the sentence because I want the reality to come from them. I don't, as the mediator, want to say, the numbers just aren't working, but I will go there if I have to. So I go from emotion to numbers. Let's just deal with numbers. And how do these numbers work for each of you? What do you do?
Yeah, well, first I want to just talk a little bit more granularly because I'm hoping that the people who are listening are the ones who need our advice. So when you say you're looking at the numbers, can you explain, say there's a divorcing couple listening right now, when you say we go over the numbers, specifically what numbers are you going, like what are the numbers you're asking them to provide, and how are you helping them see what is feasible?
Okay, so the numbers start with what's the buyout number? So in California, we have a formula for how a house is divided. And if it stays simple, for instance, who provided the down payment for the house? Was anybody using separate property money that the other person clearly recognizes as separate property money? Because that goes back to the person who provided the separate property money. Was it a gift? Was it in a savings account that existed before the marriage? So we look at those numbers. So what are you looking at as the appraised value? So we start with that. Then we back out the mortgage. Now we have a lesser value. Then we back out separate property money. Now we have a lesser value. Now, of this remaining money, is there a down payment that you both contributed to? Or did the rest of the down payment come from monies you made on your jobs, which, as we all know in the state of California, are community property dollars? Right. So then we look at the net. Now with the net, you divide that in half. That's the equity portion that each person gets, and that's the number that has to be provided to the other person who's leaving the house.
Right.
Okay, so there's that number. And then I am famous for calling the mortgage company in the middle of the mediation because a lot of times they haven't done it yet. They've just assumed, and they each bring in maybe a different piece of information. So I say, well, can we just call your mortgage company now, see if we can get somebody on the phone, and let's verify what your options are in the buyout. Can you, again, we'll do mom, dad. Mom, can you assume the mortgage as it exists today? Now, so that's a yes or no answer. Mortgage company, do you provide loan assumptions? Loan assumption means you don't have to refinance the house. All you have to do is assume the loan, but you still have to qualify to assume the loan. And then the next question is, can the person who's leaving the house get off the loan?
Right.
So there's all these moving pieces, and the mortgage company is the one who's going to dictate that path forward. Now, when all of that is laid out, then we look at where's the compromise point. Who can move from their positions for how long in order to keep the kids in the house with a stable environment?
Yes, and I want to add a couple other things that come up in the mediations. Sometimes people might say, well, I spent my own money to remodel the bathroom, and I want that money back out. So before they even do the net, people are already taking back money that they put in because they said, well, that was all my money. So then they have to mediate it, negotiate it, and get to an agreement about whether someone is going to allow the other spouse to take out the money that they invested to remodel or fix some part of the house. Then the other negotiation, there's like so many small negotiations inside the bigger one, is do we negotiate and agree to using an appraiser, or do we use comps given to us by the realtor that doesn't cost as much but is less accurate? And then the other issue is, from what I've been told, is that an appraiser will appraise it differently if it's going on the market versus if it's a refinance buyout.
I never heard that, Alice.
Yeah, they say that it comes in at a lower value because they are including any foreclosures in the area. But they don't include that. This is my understanding, that they don't
Okay.
include that if it's just going on the market because it's whatever the market bears. So if someone's trying to do a buyout and they get an appraiser and they say, "Oh, by the way, this is for a buyout," then that the appraisal might come in a little bit lower. So that's what I've been told, that it is different.
Okay, I'm going to ask these questions of mortgage people and appraisers because I really never heard that before.
And I feel like it's really important for couples to get all the information, like you were talking about, how you call the mortgage people and, calling the different people to get information about whether you qualify. Do you qualify for a loan assumption? It's not so easy just to take people's names off the title, right? And
Excellent point. Do not take your name off the title if you can't leave mortgage because you no longer have an asset. In the event that you might have to pick up and pay the mortgage for whatever reason. Now you have nothing to
yes,
take with you.
you have a giant debt and no asset to
And
even
no
meet
asset.
that
Yeah,
debt, right?
exactly.
If your name is on there and let's say your ex-spouse passes away suddenly, you can at least sell the house and then pay it off. But if you took your name off of it and there was nothing set up in their will that it goes to you when they die, then they die. Now you owe the money for it and you can't even sell it because the house is actually not yours because you took your name off the deed.
Alice, many, many years ago, I started explaining that to people because people didn't understand that being nice and taking their name off the title, because that's how they looked at it. They're being nice. And I'm like, oh no, this will be financially devastating to you. What if she passes? Just something innocent like that, not even default on paying the loan. What if she passes? What if she's in an accident, can't work anymore, therefore has no income to even fulfill the obligation? You have put yourself in a position that you've just jeopardized your whole financial life. This is a big deal.
Yeah,
And let me add one quick thing. Not all mortgage brokers are equal. If your particular mortgage company isn't giving you what you need, shop it. Don't just stay there, shop it. I was so surprised at how different mortgage brokers can be.
yes. And I wanted to go back to that small thing that you mentioned about, let's say if you took your name off the deed, but you did not take your name off the loan, and let's say the worst case scenario happens, which is not that your ex-spouse dies, but like you mentioned, Judith, that something happens and they're no longer able to work. They become disabled. And so now not only can they not continue to pay the mortgage and you have to pay for it, you can't even say, hey, well, since you can't afford it, can you please get rid of it and go rent? Because if they don't have a job, they're not going
Oh,
to be able to rent,
that's right.
right? Because you have to show that you have income. And so no landlord will say, oh, well, we'll rent to you if you have no income coming in, right? Unless you can get
Yeah.
your Section 8 or your disability to qualify. But let's just say for some reason it doesn't, or it's not enough. So now you're on the hook in this terrible worst case scenario where the person cannot leave the house because they can't afford to rent somewhere. They're in a house where they can't pay the mortgage. You are still on the hook to pay the mortgage and you have no right to the house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. You've just boxed yourself in.
So these are all the different things that I wish people would consider when they are negotiating the marital home, because there are a lot of moving pieces to that, right? You and I both know.
Yeah, there are. And something that just occurred to me that actually never occurred to me before until just I'm listening to you talk and agreeing with you, and I'm thinking, I would never tell somebody that moving would not affect their children. I don't know their children. And I feel that would be stepping over the line for me. But I've never had anybody call me back after the divorce was final and they sold the home and everybody got a new place to live. I have never in 13 years had somebody say, Judy, my kids are suffering because they're not in their family home. So what that makes me think is, I'm wondering, Alice, if parents shouldn't call their therapist. I'm finding a lot of parents put their kids in therapy immediately. So I'm really, really pleased that they're taking this action. So maybe the therapist can weigh in if they're seeing the kids, what really the kids need. Do they need to be in that home? Will that home really be disruptive if, in fact, they can still go to the same school? They won't lose their friends. What if those two pieces stay in place and you simply have to move?
Right.
What do you think?
I mean, it really depends, right? Because if they're able to move out of the house, everyone sells it and they get their own place and they're able to stay within the same communities, that's one scenario. That's like
The best.
the best. The other one is, especially because, I am in the Bay Area where it's very expensive and typically it's harder for people if they're single parents and have children to manage if they were to say, well, but we have to move 2 hours away or we have to move back to the state where we came from, right? And really disrupt their friends, their community, which actually, this is a reality that most of my clients deal with because they're in a place where they say, well, I can't afford to buy you out and live here and continue the lifestyle here. And so frequently in the negotiations, people do have to consider the fact that if they can't stay in the home or they can't afford the home, they are going to lose their community and the schools.
Right. So something other parents have done that I think has been wonderful, and that is if the move is imminent, engage the children in the move. Let the children make some decisions. Like they're not really going to be able to make the decision on what you can afford, but once the decision to live somewhere else is now acknowledged and you're looking, the kids can pick their furniture. The kids can, look at having input internally in the home. And so now you're engaging them. When you engage people in a process, it changes everything. And they have control. And I guess, isn't the issue of losing control one of the most destabilizing issues in all of our lives? So if the kids can participate in buying furniture, picking colors out.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Giving them some agency over a small portion of what they have control over.
Yes.
Right? And so putting the focus, even if it's 0.05% of the overall changes, it gives them a little bit of control over their part of the world.
Yeah.
And it can get them excited to say, hey, we're going to find this really cool place and you can decorate your room however way you want it and that sort of thing. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea, Judith. Any last ideas on things that people need to be thinking about if they are negotiating their marital home during their divorce?
What kind of upkeep does it need? Have you been putting off the water heater forever? Have you been putting off the roof? So let's just say you're able to negotiate some kind of settlement where mom and the kids, or even dad, gets to stay in the house. Well, what additional expenses are you going to be taking on so that the house remains a productive piece of real estate? That's important as well. Can you think of something else?
No, I think that's great. I think that usually there's like the option to sell, right? That's one option, and people can sell it and divide up however they need to divide it up. Then the second option is the buyout, where someone stays in there and they buy out the other person. And a third option is where everyone moves out and you keep the rental property you become co-business owners, right? You have to set up the contract so you have a very clear business contract, because you really want to make sure that if you are divorcing someone but remaining business partners, that is set up in such a way that you can actually function properly.
Yes, and if you're setting it up as business partners, I would suggest or consider keeping it joint tenancy for survivorship rights.
That's good.
Unless you each wanted to go tenants in common so that survivorship rights go to somebody specific that you would like to have 50% ownership in. There's all these different scenarios with real estate that people don't realize, and I certainly didn't. I mean, I've owned 3 homes. But when you're, and so I'm clear about me, but when you're dealing with somebody else's real estate, somebody else's money, somebody else's considerations, there may be a lot more than you yourself ever experienced as a homeowner. And lastly, owning a home isn't the end-all and be-all. I have heard plenty of arguments about the money you can save that could be more than the money you can make on equity. You really should start thinking about, what we've been taught about home ownership. That's supposed to be the goal of every person. And I bought into it. I loved owning homes. But in the LA fires, you know what I said? There's something to be said for renting. Because it's horrible to lose your stuff. But these people who cannot rebuild, who bought their homes many, many years ago when home prices were so low, their taxes are so low, they're not rebuilding.
Right.
And so as a renter, that's one big issue off your plate. But I listened to a lecture, Alice, about home ownership versus renting, and the numbers astounded me. How much you can save if you have a decent rental price than what you can accumulate in equity, depending on the state you live in.
Interesting. That would be a good next episode, right, Judith?
Okay. I'll do my research on that.
But thank you so much for joining us today, and I really very much enjoy talking about this. This is very near and dear to my heart as well, because of the fact that in my day-to-day mediations, it is something that we contend with regularly. Almost everyone that comes through with a divorce has a marital home. They have to make decisions, very, very profound and impactful decisions about what they're going to do with the home. So I do appreciate you bringing your expertise as well, Judith. And if people want to work with you, how can they reach you? How can they find you?
So just go to my website. Everything is on the website, divorceresourceinc.com. So the name is Divorce Resource Incorporated, but divorceresourceinc.com, it's all there.
Awesome. And thank you once again, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Negotiation with Alice, and we will see you next time.